Welcome to the service podcast of the First Unitarian Society of Milwaukee, a place where freedom, reason, spirituality, community, and social justice all come together. The sermon this week, presented by the Reverend Jennifer Nordstrom, is entitled, What Makes Us a We? But first we hear a story from worship associate Alexis Fielik.
I wrote what I'm about to read during a particularly moving service sitting right up there. Why I love this place. I love this place for the warm glow of light through stained glass windows on Sunday mornings and at twilight. I love this place for the smell of old wood and fresh coffee, the sound of my own voice in harmony with Claude, Janet, and Jane. I love this place for the taste of store-bought cookies and potato soup made in somebody's kitchen with justice and fellowship in mind. I love this place for Jennifer's voice and the silence that follows. I love this place for its language, its words, its story, and its heart. I love this place because of laughter, the memory of Christian's honey vodka, and a dining room painted Greenwich Village green by careful, loving hands. I love this place for the strong arms and gentle hands of singers united in mourning the lost, connected in grief and compassion, a chosen family. I love this place for hearing my voice, either lifted in song or raised in discussion with the board, the task force, or a search committee. I love this place for the community of young adults it let me build when I came here, for the communities of pastoral care and chalice circles, choir and poetry that welcomed me in. I love this place for the ache in the back of my throat at the end of a sermon or hymn, the sense of fullness to overflowing with heart food. I love this place because without it I would be less. I would be hungry. Without it, I would know less fully who I am and who I want to be. Without it, I would not be sitting up here, scrawling in the margins of my order of service, tears of gratitude in my eyes.
The First Unitarian Society of Milwaukee, a place where freedom, reason, spirituality, community, and social justice all come together. Let's start with social justice, shall we? You guys seem to like that. At every protest that I have been to since I moved to Milwaukee, even those before In Gathering Sunday, I've run into First Church members. From Black Lives Matter to immigration to climate, whether we planned to meet up or not. First Church members are active in social justice work. It's part of your identity, how you know yourselves. And of course, it's not just protesting. Just last week, the Immigration Action Group went to the Milwaukee Board of Supervisors meeting to support the non-discrimination and sanctuary resolution. That resolution affirmed Milwaukee County's refusal to honor detention requests for people who are not a danger to public safety, and it passed. Many members of the congregation engage in social justice individually, and there are also teams of social justice groups here at First Unitarian. You have a social justice council made up of different social justice groups, and that work is part of your identity. It's part of the fabric of your being and your understanding of yourselves, going all the way back to your founding. In 1842, this congregation was founded with just 40 adult members, and between 1908 and 1919, this congregation founded 25 groups to improve the conditions of marginalized communities in Milwaukee. 25 groups in just 11 years at the turn of the century. And in my listening sessions, you guys know I've been having those, right? Where I sit down with small groups of you and I listen to you tell me about what makes you the congregation you are and who you're hoping to become. When I ask you, When were you at your best? What one moment can you remember when you thought, yes, this is it. This is us. This is First Church and the best version of First Church. When I ask you that question, you've shared with me social justice stories about a third of the time. One of the favorite stories that comes up is when this church was both a sanctuary and a training ground for folks who were defending reproductive rights. In the 1990s, anti-abortion groups were targeting the clinic up the street and clinics all around this city, and this congregation opened its doors during the day as a safe place for folks who were doing clinic defense. The place was bustling with activity, sheltering weary defenders and reinvigorating those who went out to stand on the front line in front of that clinic and escort women in. And many of those people on the front lines were also from this congregation. On one day, the congregation held a training here at church for over 200 clinic defenders. And the congregation also helped found the Milwaukee Clinic Protection Program. This is just one of the places where you chose to make your stand and say, we're going to defend the rights of women. We are going to stand up for social justice. One story of many, many stories. Freedom. One of our beloved hymns, Faith of the Larger Liberty, sings, faith of the free, monarch and creed defying, in thy dear name the costly heritage we claim. We sing of this seeming contradiction. We are a faith of the free, one that defies monarchs and creeds, and that freedom is costly. That freedom requires our commitment and our participation and our defending. James Freeman Clarke, who was a leading 19th century Unitarian minister and theologian, argued that the only way for us to be a truly free faith was to pay for the cost of the congregation ourselves. We could not be free if we were beholden to a higher power that gave us money along with orders. If we were to be free, Clarke wrote, then contributions to the church must be freely given without strings attached. The voluntary principle of the church means that, quote, the expenses of the church shall be defrayed by a voluntary subscription, and pews shall not be rented or sold or taxed. At our roots, we believe that our theological freedom is fundamentally tied to our voluntary contributions to the church. That we cannot be truly free and democratically run if somebody else holds the power of the purse over us. We hold the power. Indeed, 100 years later, 100 years after Clarke was writing, and nearly 100 years ago, the Unitarian theologian James Luther Adams wrote that, quote, the self-supporting character of the congregation makes the taking of the collection in the church a virtual sacrament. I know that might sound like sacrilege, especially in the Midwest that eschews having conversations about money to say from the pulpit that the taking of the collection is a sacrament. But it is a sacrament in our free faith. We have many ways to collect pledges and contributions, from mailed checks to electronic fund transfers, and I'm sure Cherie will tell all about any of those ways if you'd like to talk to her about it. But despite all of this modern technology, we still pass the offering plate during the worship service because it is a ritual symbol of our freedom and our democracy. That symbol gets passed through this congregation because it means that we choose how to run this congregation. We choose what our mission and our vision is. We choose our ministers and what we do together, our vision and our work in the world, and we are able to choose it because we voluntarily commit to support the congregation ourselves. That offering plate is the symbol that this congregation is ours. We run it together. Further, by not understanding our pledges as taxes or as payment for services, not having that model of consumerism of church, we're also making an argument about equity, about fairness. We're saying that nobody owns this church more than anybody else. You can't pay more money to get a better seat up front. We don't leave your names on the pews based on how much you contribute to the church. It's about voluntarily saying, I am in. I am a part of this, and I want to contribute to it because I'm grateful for it. Nobody owns this church more than anybody else. Rather, we all own it equally, and everyone is welcome into it because we voluntarily contribute to it, support it, and participate in it. That's what stewardship means. It means we're all in this together, and everyone is welcome. When we participate like that, when we participate in a voluntary way, and run the organization ourselves, James Luther Adams argues that we're making the democracy writ large stronger and more free. When we practice that sort of democracy here in church, committing to an organization voluntarily and running it, we are practicing the skills to make our democracy work. We are practicing civic participation. Moreover, by strengthening an institution that is freely run and democratic, we're strengthening the society in which the institution lives. Adams came to this conclusion while he was studying in Germany in the 1930s, watching the rise of the Nazi Party. In that time period, Adams saw that the free and voluntary groups that were in Germany held the capacity for counterpower to the Nazis. Groups that were self-organized and self-run and were not beholden to the state, had the possibility and the strength to resist in a special way. He came back to the United States convicted about the need to strengthen our own voluntary organizations and institutions in the name of democracy here, to strengthen democracy. And importantly, Adams lamented the silence of the German church during the Nazi rise to power. He grieved it, and he believed that if the German church had spoken out, it could have helped stop what happened in Germany. In our voluntarily coming together as a congregation, we are practicing the skills of citizenry and committing ourselves to a place of counterpower. We're also engaging in a countercultural act of participation rather than consumerism. Rather than buying something, rather than understanding yourselves as paying me or the other staff for what you get from us, you are contributing to a collaborative enterprise that you are co-creating with us. This place is ours because we participate in it and support it by sharing our time and talent and treasure. We're a we because we choose to be, because we're joining with one another and we're creating the church and its ministries. Now, you will probably notice that as you increase your participation, as you increase your commitment and your engagement, you'll also increase your sense of belonging and of ownership. A longtime member and leader of the congregation, Gordy Miller, told me a story about the first time he really felt included here. He was a member of a relatively large support group, and in that support group one day, somebody asked him to take home the group's books and literature and then bring it back to future meetings. They didn't have anywhere to store the literature at their meeting place, and they needed somebody who would be responsible enough to take home the materials and bring them back. Up until that point, Gordy had felt like an anonymous member of the group, an anonymous member of the congregation. But that simple request made him feel instead like he was a trusted and accepted member of both the group and the congregation. For the first time in that moment, he was so honored to take home the books and bring them back that he felt like he belonged. He felt like he was a member of First Church. Now, Gordy is on the finance committee, the pastoral care associates, and the 175th anniversary team. So, as you engage, recognize that engagement begets more engagement. Belonging a little bit begets more belonging. Contributing some brings back and increases your sense of connection. Reason. This church is also a place of reason. Thank goodness. This is something that's more important than ever today when national spokespeople try to play off alternative facts and use big data to manipulate the population's feelings rather than engaging their minds. This is a place where reason means something, where we recognize objective facts rather than alternative ones, and where we like our sermons with footnotes. And worry not, I have them for this sermon. I was actually asked for a reference from the previous congregation and gave it to them. Part of what makes us a we in this tribe is that we are at least as committed to truth as we are to tribalism, and we will doggedly pursue it. The other part of what makes us a we, and an admittedly complex we, is that our dogged pursuit of the truth is balanced with an understanding that there are different forms of truth. Now, there are not different forms of fact. Things like numbers and counting are objective, hard facts. But there are different truths of meaning about life and about people, and about God. And here, we encourage people to explore these larger truths, to not shut down their hearts and their lives to the open exploration of meaning and purpose in human life as it grows and changes over the years. It is our openness to a variety of experience, our openness to new ideas, new science, new discoveries about reality that makes us religiously liberal. And it is our insistence on a commitment to science and the most discerning gaze at objective facts that makes us reasonable. We combine these two in our identity. And we encourage both the telling of hard facts with the truth-telling of growth and discovery that combine fact and experience. Because although we are an intellectual community, and part of our mission is to engage the mind in a reasoned approach to the world, reason alone will not save us. Reason plus love will save us. We are a thoughtful people who consider the world and its workings carefully. But knowing alone will not give us the answer to how to be human. When the United States dropped nuclear weapons on the cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, Albert Einstein, that priest of the scientific mind, that great knower of facts, said, "The unleashed power of the atom bomb has changed everything save our modes of thinking, and thus we drift towards unparalleled catastrophe." The solution to this problem lies in the heart of mankind, not in its thinking. This solution, not just to our increased human capacity for destruction, but the solution to our human tendency towards destruction, lies in our hearts, not in our heads. We will not think ourselves out of cruelty and indifference. We may, in fact, think of good strategies about why we shouldn't be cruel or indifferent. We may think of grand schemes for how to lead the people away from cruelty and indifference. But it is the feeling of empathy that will actually lead people away from harming others. It is the feeling of generosity that will lead us away from greed, the feeling of connection that will lead away from selfishness. And while we know this to be true, there are studies upon studies that show it. It is feeling empathy, feeling generosity, and feeling connection that will actually lead to the behavior change of kindness. So while all human beings are capable of these feelings, we know that they're not automatic. We have to practice them. And that's what church is for. It is a community of practice being in relationship, of practicing feeling empathy across difference, of practicing connection rather than distance, of practicing generosity rather than greed. That's why we combine nurturing the spirit with engaging the mind. We have to feed those tendencies that we value, strengthen them like a muscle. We have to return to our commitment to empathy and generosity and connection again and again every week through the poetry and practice of worship. We have to ignite our spirits again and again with symbols of goodness and remind us of the love of humanity and the beauty of the world. We have to invite our souls home again and again to what we value, the best of ourselves and what we're longing to become. Every week, returning to the source of existence, to that experience of something larger than us, to our sense of a wholeness that is beyond our individuality and beyond words. Return to the why, to the why, to the why of protecting and nurturing and sustaining life. Community. All of this, freedom, reason, spirituality, and social justice, all of those things make up our community. They are woven through the fabric of it. This is the context in which we know ourselves, know who we are and whose we are. We are each other's, but we are also our families and the world's and all of existences. Through our sense of belonging in a specific place with a specific we at a specific moment in time, we become a we, and that shapes the I. We come to know ourselves again and again through are people. We are social creatures. We long for connection and interrelationship, multi-generational connection across families. We long for connection across difference. But modern society, with its highways and houses and deep division of human labor, does not have as strong a social fabric as historical human communities. Our society feels that rending in so many ways, from how we care for our elders to how our children play. A multi-generational community of care. A multi-generational community of difference and identity and freedom and depth is a modern anomaly, and it is precious. Our membership and development coordinator, Cherie Taylor, experienced the deep care of this community early on in her service here. Last year, her husband, Anthony, became seriously ill and was hospitalized. Their family was scared. And when he thinks back on it, Anthony remembers that beyond the vigil his immediate family kept, he got more visits from First Church members than anybody else, including some members of his own extended family. People he never met came and visited him in the hospital because Cherie is one of us, and he was Cherie's husband, and he was sick. So the people came. Anthony said, "I don't understand. I never gave that community anything. I mean, except my wife. But they showed up for me anyway. We showed up for him anyway because we saw him as a part of us." And this year, Anthony wants to give to the community, not out of obligation, but because he understands it in a new way. Because he understands what community means and he wants to be a part of it. He wants to give to the community out of a sense of gratitude and belonging. We are a we because of you. This church, First Church, is its people. It's not the minister or this lovely building or its governance structure. You are First Church. You are it and you own it through your participation and your relationships and your commitment. At this time in history, at this moment in our country, we need multi-generational communities of care that love across difference, that work for social justice, that are free and democratic and grounded in love. We need them. We need our doors to be open for more people who need a community like this, who are longing for a place to come home to right now, a place where they can come home to their own souls. This is a place like that. We are the people like that. That Yale historian that I told you about last week, Timothy Snyder, who gives advice about how to resist authoritarianism, number 1 was don't obey in advance. Number 2 was pick an institution and defend it. Pick an institution and defend it, because voluntary associations strengthen free democracies. Because they're a place where people gather and share values and are grounded in a sense of community. And because this is a place where freedom and reason, spirituality and community, and social justice meet, I'm choosing this as my institution that I'm going to pick and defend. Like Anthony, I'm in. I want it. I want to be part of it. This place has what we need for this time in history, for ourselves and our neighbors and our community, and I want to be a part of it. So I'm making a commitment to pledge 5% of my annual take-home, and I'm hoping that you will join me in this pledge drive and pledge what brings you joy. Pledge a commitment to this church out of gratitude. Pledge something that will cultivate in you a sense of deep belonging. May it be so.
Thank you for listening. For more information about our denomination and our church, visit us on the web at uumilwaukee.org or visit us on a Sunday morning at 1342 North Astor Street in Milwaukee, at the corner of Astor and Ogden on the city's Lower East Side. All are welcome. Our podcasts are copyright 2016 by the First Unitarian Society of Milwaukee. All rights reserved.